Hey guys, welcome back. Your midnight movie this week is The Monster Squad from 1987. I literally just got done rewatching this movie 5 minutes ago, and I have not seen this movie in probably 20 years or so, at least not all the way through. And man, this movie is magic. This movie really is a gem. It should have been a franchise. It is unfortunately, I think, a victim of probably having, I think it went up against some other bigger movies in the theaters in 1987, did not get a lot of a marketing budget and sort of just drifted away, but would become a major hit on home video. And that is where I discovered it as a kid. And I was wondering if this movie would hold up. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen it. I remember really being blown away, being genuinely scared by the monsters, really being impressed by how badass the kids were. But I wondered, okay, it's been a minute. It'll be 40 years next year that this movie has been around. Does it hold up? And god damn, does it. This movie is so fun. I feel like I haven't reviewed such a fun movie as this on this channel, maybe ever. Monster Squad is a horror comedy and now absolute cult classic, written and directed by Shane Black and Fred Dekker. Directed by Fred Dekker, screenplay by Shane Black and Fred Dekker. Shane Black, you might know. He did The Long Kiss Goodnight. He did Last Boy Scout. He played one of the roles in Predator. You know, he's a UCLA film school grad who did some really solid work. Fred Dekker is an amazing director, and I'm trying to remember if he ended going up and doing a whole bunch of other stuff after this. I don't remember him doing a whole lot that was of note. Which is, I mean, he did other stuff. House, Night of the Creeps, House 2, Ricochet, If Looks Could Kill, RoboCop 3, The Predator in 2018. You know, maybe not the most, sterling resume, but the guy worked. I would say, based on just what I've just watched, I'm blown away at how dynamic this guy is as a director. To take the Universal movie monsters, that is Count Dracula, the Wolfman, the Gillman, Frankenstein's monster, and the Mummy, and do them so perfectly, so classically. They are legit scary in this movie. It is all practical effects. And take that real sense of dread, of terror, of real fright, and meld it into basically what is kind of a more badass version of some kids from the Goonies. These kids curse. They swear. Some of them smoke. These kids are like just your quintessential badass 80s kids. And they did it in the 80s before Stranger Things came around. You have the team leader in, let me pull up. You've got Sean, who's played by Andre Gower. He's kind of the team leader. He's really intense. He's the one who wears Stephen King rules t-shirts. He's got, monster magazines in his bed. He's got monster posters all over his clubhouse. You know, he's sort of like the brain trust. He's the one who does all the research. Then you have Patrick, who's kind of, if you're familiar with the original Voltron, Lance, the guy who piloted the Red Lion. He doesn't seem like he cares a whole lot, but he's cool. He's down for whatever. He's just kind of like your bestie who's just cool. Then you have this kid, Horace, who's known as Fat Kid through the entire movie. Again, this was the 80s, folks. And they kind of just call him Fat Kid. He's kind of bullied, but he's a sweet, good kid. And he has an incredible, I think he's probably got one of the best arcs of all of the members of the Monster Squad in the entire movie. And it's another reason to watch it. I love a redemptive arc, especially for characters that you don't think are maybe all that. Fat Kid / Horace. Just, he's fun. He's kind of a comic relief. Sometimes you're laughing with him. Sometimes you're laughing at him. But not much. You're not laughing at him much. You are immediately, when he's introduced, you feel for him. You have a sense of empathy for him. You want him to win. And then you have Rudy, played by Ryan Lambert, who I remember from Kids Incorporated. If you're a certain age, you know what that means. If you're not, don't even worry about it. But Rudy was my favorite. Rudy is sort of the moody, badass leather jacket wearing, with the collar up, sunglasses wearing, kid who smokes, doesn't really care about monsters, but doesn't really have anything else better to do. And so he joins the Monster Club or the Squad and comes in real handy. And then, of course, you've got Sean's little sister, Phoebe. Again, all these kids are around 12 years old, but Phoebe's maybe, 7? Little girl, and she's always trying to get into the club. And, of course, it says on the clubhouse door to the treehouse, no girls allowed, because it's the 80s. And eventually, she does make her way in. Anyway, they're really well-rounded, well-written, distinct kids. Sean, Patrick, Ryan, Horace, and Phoebe. And they're so incredibly well-written. One of the things I hate about contemporary films, or even some older films, is they rarely write kids like they have an effing brain in their head. And I think what really endeared me to this movie as a kid myself when I first rented it was, oh yeah. I mean, again, maybe I had terrible parents, and I did. Boomer parents could not be bothered with actual parenting. So a lot of us grew up feral. We certainly did in the Chicagoland area, which is where I grew up. We cursed. Some of us smoked. Some of us drank. I didn't drink or smoke, but I had two parents that did so. Without smoking, I basically had double secondhand smoke. So by proxy, was a smoker. But the attitude of these kids, they liked what they liked. They liked monster movies. They read comic books. Horace, actually, one of the things I really love about Horace, when we meet him in the movie, and this isn't spoiling anything, he's reading an issue of George Perez's Wonder Woman. 1987, for those of you that are comics dorks like me, was the year that DC Comics relaunched Wonder Woman with the great, the incomparable, the legendary George Perez writing and plotting that book. And it's, to this day, it is the gold standard on Wonder Woman, her origins, her stories, all that. And I just thought it was cool that he just happened to be reading an issue of it in the movie. That level of detail it's really impressive, because this was just going to be a funny, quasi-action, quasi-family movie, which is interesting because the kids curse and they smoke. They shoot monsters. They stake monsters. There's actual blood. The Count Dracula, the villains in this movie, do not fuck around. Count Dracula is driven. The guy who played Dracula, what was his name? Duncan Regehr plays Count Dracula. He is, in my opinion, of watching movies for 40 years now, he's got to be in the top 3 portrayals of Dracula of all time. And I'm putting him up with Bela Lugosi's original Dracula, which his Dracula is clearly modeled on. He's got the classic, frilly front and, the black cloak with the red silk insert. He's made up like Bela Lugosi's classic Count Dracula. And so, yeah, I would say this guy, Duncan Regehr, Bela Lugosi, and, of course, I'm blanking on his name, from, God damn it, Dracula. Hang on, Bram Stoker. Gary Oldman. So Gary Oldman, Duncan Regehr, and Bela Lugosi, top 3 Draculas ever. Even the Wolfman, who, the level and dedication, the skill and craft that goes into the transformation of the Wolfman in this movie is as good as An American Werewolf in London, which was directed by John Landis, which is the best werewolf movie ever made. And I would even put it above the original Wolfman from the 40s. And I hold that movie in great regard. But in terms of the canon, the corpus, I should say, of werewolf movies, the transformation, the animatronics, the practical effects that go into the Wolfman in this movie is legit scary. It's not just some guy who's got some hair, glued to his face. running around in a ripped shirt. Although he does run around in a ripped shirt, he's fearsome looking. The Gill Man, too, which you guys might know was the creature from the Black Lagoon, shows up in this movie as well. And he looks legit slimy, scary, like something out of, again, a legit horror movie. And that's, again, what's beautiful about this movie is for as fun, badass, quirky, and daring and courageous as these young kids are in this movie fighting these monsters, the monsters are something to be feared. They are really scary looking. There's nothing about how these monsters are presented to soften them at all. And I feel like that's sort of missing from, I guess, well, a movie like this has absolutely been missing from film, not just in the 2020s, but the 2010s and the 2000s and the 90s. I would love to see somebody take the heart and themes of this movie and remake it. I think it could be done. It could be done well if done right. And then lastly, you've got The Mummy. And The Mummy is fun too. You don't think of The Mummy as being necessarily scary because he walks really slow. But this mummy is like legit scary. He looks like a zombie from Evil Dead wrapped in bandages. Like he is not just, somebody that you could just run away from, although you can. He's got real heft to him. There's a weight, there's a gravity to each and every one of the monsters. The premise of this movie is really simple. Basically, every 100 years, the forces of darkness convene in an attempt to find a magical amulet that if they can use and cast a spell to open up the door to limbo, they can then use that power to conquer the entire world. And historic for a long time, there was one great man who fought against the forces of Count Dracula, the forces of evil, and that's the great vampire and, I guess, darkness hunter, Abraham Van Helsing. The movie begins hundreds of years ago in Castle Dracula with Van Helsing and his men storming the castle. They have in tow a young virgin girl who they need to recite the spell in order to open limbo to suck in Dracula and all of evil in order and close it forever to save the world. Well, again, this all happens at the beginning of the movie, and Van Helsing's plan does not go accordingly, and some shit goes down, and then boom, pops us into present day, which happens to be 1987, and here we are at a school ground somewhere, anywhere, America. It was all shot, I believe, shot between Newhall, California, and the backlot at Warner Brothers in Burbank, California. But it really, the way they set it up, it could be anywhere. I feel like it could be the South, it could be the Midwest, it could be Southern California, maybe parts of the Northeast. It's very Anytown, USA. And we're one by one introduced to Horace and Sean and Ryan, Rudy and Phoebe and all of them. And, we get they're going to form Voltron at some point. We've got the distinctive characters, and they're fun, and they're cool, and they're cracking jokes, and they're talking shit to each other. Again, there's never been a more fun, grounded portrayal of just young kids like this. Maybe, I'm sure there are some kids who were raised right out there that don't curse, and, certainly no kids should smoke or drink or whatever, or be looking through girls' windows. So there's a slight bit of that 80s sexism in there, which, while regrettable, does give a bit of authenticity, at least to the time. It's not too gross, it's not too heavy-handed, so I don't think it will put too many people off. It's done in a way, and again, these young boys get their asses kicked too, so it's, there's a learning curve to how they should be acting, and, they do save the world, so, maybe it balances out, I don't know. So, the point of the plot is the boys slowly start to put things together. Sean's father is having an argument with his mother because he's been doing overtime. His father's a cop. He's arguing with his mom, and Sean overhears, I'm dealing with these crazies, these nutzos. I had a guy come in, got brought into the station, screaming he was a werewolf. He's punching officers. He, grabbed a guy's gun, and fired it into the air, locked me up. It's like I'm dealing with a lot of stress now. And, she's just like, well, you need to work less. And well, Sean obviously latches onto, what do you mean a guy claiming to be a werewolf? These sort of weird things are starting to happen, around town. Day or so later, Sean's mom comes back from an estate sale or rummage sale with an old, crusty book in German. Well, it turns out it is Van Helsing's diary. And, Sean is like, holy shit. Wow. Oh, sorry, Mom. Didn't mean to curse, and takes it and shares it with his friends. And, they slowly start to put together that weird stuff's happening around town. A guy claiming to be a werewolf. There might be more going on here. And wouldn't you know it, there sure is. Dracula shows up. He goes into, there's a moment in the movie where there is a plane delivering, I guess, dead bodies? I don't know. Well, one of those dead bodies happens to be Frankenstein's monster. Dracula gets on board. Hilarity ensues. And so now there's two. Frankenstein's body drops into a swamp somewhere, or maybe a marshland, and that is then exhumed by, wouldn't you know it, the Gill Man, because he just happened to be in the water there. They eventually converge with Dracula and the Wolfman, and now it's on. Now they've got to find the amulet. And again, the boys are slowly putting things together, trying to tell adults, but of course, if you were a kid in the 80s or the 90s like myself, parents had much better things to do than to talk to their children or listen to their children. And so they did what 80s kids always do: roll up their sleeves, grab a pack of cigarettes, sharpen up some steaks, and handle that shit themselves. And boy, do they. They do not pull punches. For as much as Dracula is happy to kill off people in this movie, and he does. He's chomping throats. He's killing cops. The kids aren't messing around either. They are making use of the facilities in woodshop and making steaks. They are smelting silver bullets in metal shop. They're doing this movie is just so perfect. What's really interesting too are the little bits of heart that are baked into this movie. You have a neighbor of the boys called Scary German Guy. And certainly if you grew up in the Midwest, you know who the Scary German Guy is. All of us in our neighborhoods, whether you are from the Chicagoland area or Wisconsin or Minnesota or the Dakotas or Iowa, you had, in the 80s, you had older people that either immigrated after the war, people who, these people were, coming from a war-torn Europe, and you had Germans and Slavs and different people. We had some Scary German Guys in my neighborhood. The Scary German Guy in Monster Squad has a particularly interesting backstory, and I won't ruin it here. I'm really trying not to give you guys too much because this movie's so fun. It's so fun. Watch it with your friends. Show your kids. I can't wait to show my nieces and nephews this movie. It is, because I got badass nieces and nephews. They will absolutely just lock in on these characters. It'll be so fun. But yeah, the minor little bits and pieces of backstory to Scary German Guy, to some of the townspeople, the boys that are in the club, it has a incredible synthesis of scary, of heartfelt and hopeful, of 80s badassery, a little bit of like 80s, or what we didn't call it back then, sort of geek culture. There's a scene where some kids are holed up in a comic book shop in the town square. It's, and it's bloody. I wouldn't say it's gory, but they don't pull punches when they're fighting monsters. The monsters don't pull punches when they're going in on the chomp for human beings. But it serves the story. There's no splatterfest going on in this movie at all. It's rated PG-13. You could probably show your kids this and be fine, depending on whether or not you're raising really delicate kids or not. That's up to you. But man, so fun. The This movie had absolute franchise potential, and they didn't think in those terms, unfortunately, back in those days. Fred Dekker, Andre Gower, who plays Sean, several of the other members, I believe, this guy Duncan Reger, who played Count Dracula, for years really worked hard to try to get a sequel made, and it doesn't look like it ever happened, obviously. It's almost 40 years later. The hopeful kid in me thinks maybe they could still do it. There's a part of me that wants to get as many people watching this movie as possible, because it would kind of be cool. I mean, they did it with Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was 1984. They didn't start doing movies again. By the way, they're really good. Afterlife, Frozen Empire, excellent. That's, almost 40 years later, and they sort of just pick up where they left off with, the original team and then new members, younger members. I think you could probably do something, because Andre Gower's still around. Ryan Lambert, who played Rudy, is still around. Unfortunately, the kid who played Horace passed away years ago. He had kind of a tragic end. But some of these other actors are still around. And you could either recast Horace or have kind of a dedication to him. I'm not sure. You could do something if you had the right script. And if you really studied the shit out of the original movie and kept all of that dedication to it, yes, being spooky and scary, a dedication to it being really well-rounded three-dimensional kids. They're not Boy Scouts. They're not degenerates. They're an amalgam. They're real people, real kids. And maybe, I don't know, maybe Sean and Rudy are married, have kids of their own. And something's happened that instead of it being every 100 years, somebody's screwing with, I don't know, time and space. Somebody's found the amulet, a new amulet, something. You could come up with anything. It's movie mysticism, movie science. You could develop a reason why the existing members of the old Monster Squad are pulled back together, and with the help of their kids, maybe a new ragtag group of kids, diverse kids, maybe a couple more girls, maybe a gay kid, come together and vanquish the forces of evil one more time with the help of the original OG members. I don't know. I think it could be fun. But if you know what's good for you, if you just want something that is just lighter but exciting, a sense of adventure, a sense of escape, the Monster Squad is perfect. The Monster Squad is, I think it's why I love movies. Really. I'm so glad this movie is not as it aged really well. It aged great, in fact. With the exception of that, again, that slight bit of 80s sexism that unfortunately permeated pretty much everything in the decade, in the 90s too, it really works well. There are no throwaway characters. Phoebe, again, who's like a 7 or 8 year old girl, is one of the strongest members, even though she's not as prominent throughout the film as the boys are. The boys are fun. The parents are believable. The townspeople aren't... The townspeople and the police aren't two-dimensional, and the monsters are just legit. They look so good. Practical effects, man. Practical effects forever. But if you know what's good for you, and you want something that's just different, that's fun, that's spooky, that's scary, that the pace of it is perfect. There's no downtime. We get going, and it's just boom, we're off to the races, and it's so good. They do... sort of invent some slang in this movie with regard to, like, they don't say dick, they say dork, and they don't say nuts, they say nards, and I don't remember those terms necessarily being in common parlance as a badass 80s kid in Chicagoland when I was growing up. Maybe it was, did you guys say nards? Did you guys say dork for the male member? Let me know in the comments below. Do you remember this movie? Would you want to see a return? I think that you could do it. I think that there is enough creativity out there, and I think the Ghostbusters sort of revival has proven that you can do a fun action-adventure, quasi-horror comedy, if you have the right script. You bring in, again, the old guard and new elements and new characters, too. God, I would love to see this. Anyways, check out this movie, guys. Share it. Let me know what you think. Do you guys remember this? Like, I feel like this is a cult classic. I read some stuff online. It does seem like this movie is well remembered. I just wish it would have gotten more shine and more love when I was a kid, because, man, we should have gotten 4 or 5 films out of this premise. Oh, it could have been great. You know, they start out with the Universal movie monsters, then maybe they move on to just ghosts or just vampires, or maybe they're battling zombies. This could have been, it could have been really fun. Somebody needs to AI a sequel or sequels or something out there. Or get the old band together. Let's raise some money online. Let's kickstart this son of a bitch and get Monster Squad 2. Anyways, guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for your time. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed, frankly, any of my videos, I'd really appreciate it if you would smash that like button, subscribe, and share. I would really like to build this channel into a community. I know I'm not the only film nerd out there. There's got to be more of you. But I would love to know what you think about this film and others. And thanks again, guys. I'll see yous in the next one. Bye.